Welcome back to Spice Volumes. I'm Mayuri.
I'm Lauren.
I'm Alessandra.
And I'm Aditi. This week, we have read Peaches and Honey, which is the first book in the Immortal Truths duology by R. Reita. This is probably one of the better romantices that I've read in a long time. It is not the spiciest of books, so I feel like readers should be kind of aware because it sometimes be advertised as that. I'll preface this by saying I am a historian. I have studied history, and this has been the first time that I've seen this kind of amalgamation of history and romantic fantasy melded so well. So you have the two main characters, Anna and Kieran. Anna is orphaned, and the story starts in 1185. She has vitiligo skin disease, so she's been outcast, and for that time period, it's kind of like assuming you have leprosy, so touched by the devil type of thing. It follows her story, and she is chosen by Kieran, who is essentially a god, and given immortality. It then tracks her story through time. The first book, I think, ends in 1940s. So you can really kind of jump through all of these different centuries and follow her entire story and all these different lives that she's gotten to live. Mixed in there is this love story that develops between the two of them. And I just thought it was so well written for something within this genre. Very kind of different writing style, because it was like a third person present tense, which I really don't see a lot. I just thought it was so wonderful. The imagery, the kind of poeticism of her prose was just really, really lovely. The slowest of slow burns when we're talking about it as a romantic book. But yeah, I thought it was just a great, great book. It was super refreshing for someone who reads a lot of romantasy to just see something that was original without being 800 pages. Give it a 9 out of 10. It ranked really highly for me.
This is a strong 9.
Yeah, strong 9 for me too. I couldn't give it a 10 out of 10. I don't know why, but it feels like that's a medal that has to be kind of reserved for something. And I think maybe when we read the full duology, maybe that rating will change and go up to a 10 out of 10. But yeah, very, very strong 9 is the best way to put it. Just very well done.
I loved this book. I will say I'm in between an 8 and a 9. I think that there were parts of it that were a little slow, and I feel like there were parts of it where it was a little repetitive. But then I thought maybe the author was doing that on purpose because that was Anna's life. Anna's life was slow and long and repetitive. Like you saw her as a medic in these different wars, and she was witnessing all these different atrocities and everything, and I felt like after a while it was like, okay, well, we already did this, like whatever. And then I'm like, okay, is that the point? Like that is what she's experiencing. So then in a way I'm like, okay, I didn't love that, but you made me feel that way, so maybe I should give it an extra star.
Well, I think it is kind of the point. First of all, the human side of this story is just incredibly written. It's so honest and so emotional.
That's the most striking part of it, is that the writing is so, and the editing was so good.
Yeah.
That it is just a beautifully written novel. Because I will be honest, I hate historical fiction. I appreciate that you love history, but I am not a history lover. I appreciate that it happened. I don't want to read about it. I honestly started this book and I was like, 1185? No. I actually was Googling what was happening in history at those times because it made me want to learn about it more. So that's where the human side of this is so beautifully written that it's so engaging. And I mean, kind of touching on the historical aspect of things, I loved that she completely refrained from anachronistic language. I mean, it was still simplified so that it was accessible. Your average reader could still completely understand everything and not be like, why is it so wordy or anything? I think everything fits so well.
Yeah.
And these are time periods that I've studied, in depth. And there was no point where I was like, oh, this seems pretty illogical, or this doesn't really actually happen in that time period. And I think because it's so centralized around her character, and you aren't dealing with a lot of other things that would kind of not make sense with the historical narrative. But yeah, I have such good things to say about this. So you were mentioning how you felt like it was kind of repetitive or slow sometimes. And something that I noted was that at times it felt like the plot's like evolution was slow.
That
But
is
then
because she's a slow learner.
Well, to me, it's also because she is the figure that we are following.
Yeah.
So what we know is what she knows.
Yeah.
We don't know any more than she does. So when we're talking about like this bigger world that she's around, not just like even her world, but then like the fantasy elements of it, of like gods and everything, it's like we're learning at the same time as she is, which I think is also really, it's different, and it makes it a lot easier to accept how slow it is.
This is going to sound silly, but it kind of reminded me of Forrest Gump, where like it's so character driven and that there are historical elements. There's big historic things happening around her. She talks about Joan of Arc burning at the stake. She talks about the Boston Tea Party, but that's not driving the plot forward. It's just kind of happening around her, because the point of the book was more character driven, in the same sense that Forrest Gump is character driven. And you have all of these things happening, all of these major historic events happening around the character, but it's not necessarily.
Yeah, it's like it anchors you.
Yes, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah,
it like anchors you in that specific point in time. Yeah. But I think as a reader in the 21st century, it's how at least we can know, right? So like 14th century, that's what's going on right now. And that's all I have to care about. Oh, this is when Joan of Arc was being burnt at the stake. But what's this other person's life that's going on at the same time? And then you're so invested in her character.
I'm just going to cut in and say that anything past this point is going to include spoilers for the book. So if you've not read it, go read it and give us that.
Wonderful.
I was going to say, as someone who did not focus on history, I remember the major points, but I couldn't tell you when some of the really historic things happened. And so it took me a hot second to realize that she had vitiligo. Like, I was pretty sure that that's what she had.
Me too.
But I was just like, could it be something more mystical? Because it's a fantasy novel, right? So I was just like, the way they describe the markings on her skin, it's like pale shadows that started on her chest and they grew more defined. And so in modern day, like, that is a description of vitiligo, but at the same time, like, I thought it could be something mystical. And so I wasn't sure where they were going with that.
You know, I think in a sense, I kind of liked that she didn't call it out in such blatant terms, because if you're thinking of someone who's living at that time period, it's like you live in 1185. How else are you going to describe it?
Like, it feels that's what they know. Like, that's not something that's natural. Her feelings towards her vitiligo is so devastating, actually, throughout the book.
Yeah.
And you see the point where Durin is like, even in modern day, like in the 1800s, 1900s, he's like, you still feel this way? Because they're in the 20s, right? They go out dancing.
A slow learner. Like, I'm talking about life lessons. I'm not talking about picking up knowledge. I'm talking about life lessons. That's why sometimes it's repetitive, because she tries to do the same fucking thing and then it gets the same result. And then she's like, well, and I'm like, well, honey,
when we start out, like, she's a very simple girl, right? Like, she was taken. So that's where I was getting confused, because like, she was taken from where she was from before, and she was a slave, essentially, if what I'm reading is right.
I mean, like, I feel like for me, the starting point was like she was somehow abandoned, and then she was like working at this lord's manor. And then it's from there that, you know, everything starts happening.
Well, she was pulled from a burning building.
Yeah, that's how it starts. And that's where I'm just like, it says a warrior pulled her from a burning building. So the way I interpreted it is that's like her village was part of a conquest and they burned it down, and then they took all the people, right, to put them in servitude. My only reference for this, and you're gonna die, is do you know Ever After?
Oh, Tuck Everlasting?
No, Ever After with
Cameron.
With Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. Like
so where they sell the servants, like
yeah.
So that's the only reference I have for it. So like they're servants, but they're still being sold and bought. Traded for monetary purposes. And that's where my only reference for that was. They only let her go because they thought she had leprosy. And so she lived in the forest. I was trying to figure out how old she was. And
I just would have assumed like early 20s. Like in my head,
Googled
that's
it. She's 27 is what the author said.
27.
Okay, I was not expecting that.
That's what I saw on her TikTok page. She said 27.
27's a little old. Like,
coming from like
so
a
I
bunch
will
of like
say-
people in their early 30s.
she's like literally.
She's but the way she was describing it, she was taken when she was a child because it says if she were any older, she'd be dead, right? And so she was then taken as, you know, a servant. So it says when she was 15 is when it started, and then it was discovered, and they put her out to the forest. And I think she lived there for 9 years. So I was assuming she was like 22, 24.
Same.
Yeah, I just like, I thought early 20s, but.
Well, it's just, I mean, she's such a fucking sweetheart. But part of the theme, it's definitely innocence and purity and maintaining this wonderful heart and in an environment where it's like literally destined to kill your easy heart.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, I don't know, maybe she is just a rare gem after 27 years of experiencing all that bullshit. But
that's the whole point, right?
Well, yeah, and then afterwards, she's like 600 years old, still thinking like that. And I'm just like, all right, well.
But that's why,
Kieran, I will say now that I'm thinking about this, I love that she got more assertive and gained her independence, but I don't think that she had as much of an arc as I expected her to. Because in my big age, I have done the like, hey, I'm insecure, but now I'm a little bit more secure in who I am. And it took her 400 years. So I'm kind of just like,
I think we have to really consider the time period as well.
Exactly.
Especially as a woman.
It's not like she had a therapist. I get it.
I think Kieran was her therapist.
And he sucked at it.
You're so right.
First of all, Captain Riddle's over there. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I think he's a fucking asshole for being like, I'm not going to tell you this because it's better that you don't know. Like, bitch, what do you mean?
And it's such a common trope.
But like, fuck you. Fuck you. Sorry, that's loud.
Except, like, we learn why he does that.
Whatever. I don't care. If somebody's trying to kill me, I need to know. Me not knowing is not going to make them not kill me. Like, what are we talking about here? I'm trying to protect you. Okay.
So my one thing that I absolutely love about this, I really love that the author, and it took me a hot second to realize that she was doing this, that the first paragraph of every
chapter from his point of view.
His point of view.
It took me a good while.
By the end of the chapter. But it's his point of view by the end of the chapter.
Oh.
So you see his point of view and you see her experiencing it to the why he feels that way. I didn't get it at chapter 1. But after
I might have to
chapters, I realized that his point of view is not the start of the chapter; it's how he feels at the end of the chapter. So it gives
which I mean,
you,
like
a little bit of a hint of what's going to happen.
Almost. Like
so,
I
like
didn't
here,
realize
the first one. Yeah,
it took me a while.
I'll read you the first one.
I thought it was at the beginning. Sorry,
no, it is at the beginning of the chapter. So chapter 1. Here is the passage. There is beauty in the struggle, the way life pushes when the world says pull. He sees it in the way she gasps, fumbles, chokes. Clothed in ashes and rebirth, he watches as the terror in her eyes slowly gives way to wonder. And that is a reference to the end of the chapter when she is burnt at the stake. And she is alive at the end.
Yeah. No, and I think like I knew that that's like how it is. It's just, you verbalizing it. But I mean, because it makes sense when we get to Piers, which like, oh my God.
Well, because that chapter, he says that he sees her with the child in his lap, but she has not taken in Piers yet. But that's where it's just like, it's a little bit of foreshadowing of what's going to happen. But his point of view at the end. And I thought that was so well done because it's vague enough that you don't know exactly what's going to happen. But it's enough that as you're reading the chapter, you're seeing his perspective while you're reading it.
Mm-hmm. The one that stood out for me was when I think it was the New England colonies, and there was that doctor who or surgeon who kind of dismissed her and then followed her and then like whatever.
The jealousy.
Yes, and
He
like
was
the
jealous.
little blurb was like that something about like someone else loving her or whatever, and I was like, oh, okay, I know what's coming, and then I was like trying to figure out
Yes.
like which person was gonna be
So
like,
I know I highlighted it
yeah.
because in the passage, he says jealousy is beneath him, an emotion for mortals with their too short lives and limited patience. And he goes, and he's like, and yet it's there, poison-laced fingers gripping his heart when she mentions there's another. And that's when I realized that it was still a love story because I was losing faith. I was losing faith. This is page 139. It's like, is this going to be a love story? Or is this just...
I mean, like, they don't hold hands until like 60% way through the book.
I understand his
I was gonna
self-preservation, and I understand that she had no experience with love, right? But like, she had her tears. Oh, I mean, how many times
we
did you
just like,
cry, guy?
you know, I think I cried harder when she got to the grave
Me too.
Yes,
than I did.
The
Yeah.
granddson?
Yeah, like yeah, I was.
He
My
was
God.
a good
Actually-
man, and I was like,
When he said that, that is when I absolutely lost it. I
Yeah.
lost it. I could not go on.
I needed to take a
Yeah,
moment.
because when he
and,
calls her like
assess
these
my
no.
life.
Oh my!
And I'm like,
wait,
oh.
wait.
grandmother, and
Can I tell you? Okay, so I have to read books as audiobooks because I have a toddler. So and a full-time job. I can't read and not do it. So I was listening to it while my son is playing in the kitchen sink and making this huge mess, and I am sobbing, and he's just like being a chaotic terrorist in my kitchen, and I am just so upset, and I'm like trying to like keep it together, and then he finally looks at me, why mommy sad? And I'm like, can't even tell you.
I was reading this book at my part-time job, and I was just sitting at the front desk trying to be pleasant to people while I was actively sobbing. And I was just like, and they stayed in the house, and I just couldn't. I couldn't. And I had a feeling because of Kieran's point of view, and it says something to the effect of, like,
Family's
he hopes
gonna be
this
good
helps
for her.
heal her.
Yeah,
Like, he hopes it helps heal her because, like, up until that point, like, she's haunted by the fact that she had to leave Pierce, right? And like, she doesn't know if he lived or died in the Black Plague, which I also, when I realized that he died in the plague, I was just like,
but the
No.
way
I
he
know the
died.
way he does it. Oh my God.
and it's because of the things that she taught him
I know.
that
I legitimately
allows
speak.
his
Yeah.
family to live on. And I almost wish that she goes back every couple hundred years to
She should. I think it's fucking
visit.
bullshit that she won't.
Right?
To
We
like
don't know
see
that
if
she
they
does,
like if
right?
they still believe and
Yeah, well, because he was waiting for her to come back. And so he passed the story down, even though he passed away literally like 20 something years after she left. It wasn't even a long time.
Not that long.
But I don't know. That was kind of like, and then you see her heartbreak for so long after. I really love that while the main story is Anna, through Anna's perspective and the chapter headings, you get so much nuanced information about Kieran. Think about it. He has a God's perspective. He's in people's ears. He's trying to turn history. And he talks about civilizations getting decimated no matter what he does. That's when you start seeing how vulnerable he is, because she starts to understand it's not that he doesn't want to do anything, it's that he's trying and it's not working, or there's only so much he can do. And that's part of the beauty in the writing, that Kieran is this God figure in her life that pops in and out. Yet every time their relationship gets deeper and more nuanced, and you learn so much more about him. And it adds to her feeling of service. And then when we get to the romance, finally the romance in the 1800s?
20s.
1920s.
Yes, prohibition.
She's like a flapper.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
know,
say the
he-
beaded flapper dress.
The beaded flapper dress, right? And when he points out her vitiligo and he covers it for her, but he very specifically says, this is still something that you're ashamed of.
But I don't think he has the ability to think like a human. He doesn't
Yeah.
have her same experience. It's a learned thing. It's like, yes, you can be in the 1920s and people know what it is and they know that you're not a contagious,
leper?
leper. but she has spent the past 700 years of her life living under that.
It's a confirmed assumption, right? Because it happens many times. There are few people who look past it, right? Like the pirate ship captain. I really love her time on the Chinese pirate ship.
How men are so disgusted by her, but also want to assault her. Like, that is such a
universal thing that men are terrible.
Yeah. It's just different forms of violence against women.
And she's still nice after all of it.
Well, I would say towards the end, she kind of throws in the hat a little bit, right? Like when he leaves her, because he pulls an Edward, right? Like he's just like,
he sure does.
And she, in fact, pulls a Bella.
She's been Bella the whole time. Like, let's not, like, that's Bella trying to make a difference.
That's amazing. I love that.
But here's the thing. Apart from it, he actually suffers the consequence of the first one for interfering, and he understands what would happen to her. And I think that's the first time she sees the danger. So when he leaves her, she kind of throws in the towel. She's like, he has stocked up this place enough that it's heartbreaking to see that he just assumed that at some point he would have to leave me here and I would have to survive on my own for a while. And she does. I think it's like 15 years or something like that. Something crazy like that before he comes back. And he's like, you're still here? She's like, yeah. What was I supposed to do? Fight in another pointless war? Help people when it's not going to change anything?
Well, she's like no longer jaded. You know, it's like she's finally learned at that point that, like, what can she do?
And she's like, I need a break. She's burnt out, guys, after 800 years.
Yeah, you can take 17 years off, baby girl. Like, it's okay. I'll allow it.
Like, you go dig up your potatoes.
Make your honey.
Dude, imagine the recipes that she has, though. That food must be bomb. It must be so good. Oh, perfected over almost a millennia.
How does the audiobook call Ira? Because it's like Eira, the Baba Yaga.
Isn't it Ira?
Yeah, no, that's how they say it.
Ira?
Ira.
Can I just say, the reveal that Ira is actually a misunderstood Baba Yaga?
That was cool. Can I say too, okay, in that same vein, I thought, maybe I'm wrong, this, being raised Catholic and all, I thought that Silas was supposed to be Jesus, being referred to as the shepherd, and Jesus was supposed to have, like, all the children flock to him, and immediately to me it was Silas.
Well, so, because, like, we don't know.
That's not wrong, though. Like, we don't know that that's not true.
Well, because that makes sense, because Kieran says he's known by all these different names from all these different religions. I mean, he breaks up Hanuman.
So we're trying to date them, right? The only thing that he ever mentions is older than himself is the pyramids.
Yep.
That is the only reference I have for how old these gods are. It is interesting to me that, like, the story of evolution is like Eve and the apple, right? And they're talking about that the story of their evolution was a tree and a peach. And I wonder if those parallels were on purpose because somehow that story has been filtered down.
Yeah.
And has become the story that it is.
Okay, as our, like, resident Catholic.
Yes.
The fact that he, like, the ring out of a piece of his rib. Isn't the whole thing with, like, Adam creating Eve out of, like, one of his ribs?
That's also supposed to be, like, any altar has to contain some kind of relic of a saint or a martyr. So you have to, like, any altar in any church has to have in it, like, a bone or something of a...
Oh.
Yeah.
She doesn't really touch on other religions, but she touches on other cultures and what they're called.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting that she dealt
pretty Western centric. Like, besides the pirate ship, you never really get into anything.
No, because she never goes anywhere else.
No.
She doesn't go anywhere else, right? So you see the comments from Kieran in his perspective that
go
he thinks
somewhere.
she's stagnating. Like, he's so happy when she goes to the Americas. And she goes because of his comment that they're running over civilization. So she wants to see it before it gets
And then
run
she lands with
over.
the Puritans.
Oh, God, yeah.
They suck, man. They suck.
Was
Then.
she
They
ever
suck
in
now.
Like, is she ever in, like,
Kill
Africa
me.
or South America?
He does
No,
not go to
she's not.
Africa or South America yet.
Yeah, true.
True.
We don't know if she will eventually.
Well, she hasn't
and she
gone
does
to
go
Asia. I mean, she
Russia.
was hanging out in the China Sea for a while.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say just the pirate ship. I think that was it.
Yeah, she doesn't actually
And she sends
dock.
people to Shanghai because she says that they don't need a visa to get there. Like when she's like smuggling.
I will say that comment about the forger during like the escapes from Germany is the first time that they actually talk about the logistics of being that old. You have to create new identities. And I really love that the author didn't focus on that, because I feel like when we have... Okay, so I'm going to reference this. It happens with Twilight. In fact, they talk a lot about having forgers and documents and how this works, right? Jasper is supposed to be his grandfather or something like that. So I liked that we didn't get that here.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
important
it's
to the
more just like
story.
she changes
We
her
don't care.
name.
So she sends people to her counterfeiter because they do her stuff. So I'm sure at some point in history, and I don't know when, she probably had to start modernizing birth certificates, social security, passports, and all of that stuff, right? And that's where it's kind of nice that it's still character focused. We don't have to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
We just assume that it's taken care of because it is taken care of. Do we know how much money she has?
I really liked the fact that they are just super rich. Like, you know, even though she's immortal, I like the fact that she's still like humble and she doesn't somehow become this super wealthy person just because she's immortal. I loved that.
Kieran is such a complex character, right? He is a god, but he is ruled by the first one. Kieran's character throughout this, he evolves. I think there wasn't any romance the first 400 years because he felt no romantic connection to her. He felt a responsibility. He felt connected to her. He keeps saying that he cannot interfere in the lives of mortals. That is the rule. And that the reason that he interfered in her life is kind of a little vague because technically she died because of him. And that if he hadn't interfered in her life, she would have eventually gotten murdered at the stake. I think they were just looking for a reason, but it's because of him. And the fact that she offered that goodness and she keeps offering it. And he tells her finally that the reason I picked you is because I am shackled in what I can do, but you are not, because he doesn't know you exist. So he cannot enforce the rules on you because he doesn't know you exist. And I don't know that she necessarily understands that's the reason. That scene where she almost got shot by the Germans was he had been begging her that this is not going to go your way. I actually highlighted it because it was kind of shocking, where she's at the book burning in Berlin. He says to her, nothing ever good follows a book burning. And she does a quote. And the quote is, where they burn books, they will, in the end, burn human beings too. And so she's not naive. She says, like, I understand where this is going, but I want to help. You gave me this life so that I could help. And in the end, it's her that gets him caught because he thinks that she would survive, but the Germans would find out that she was immortal. And then they would capture her.
On her because she wouldn't die.
And that would be the
Well, I
issue.
thought that was like the whole thing that like if he didn't stop her from getting killed like by the Nazis when, you know, she's helping like people cross the border into Switzerland, that once they saw that she didn't die, then they would start doing all of these experiments on her, not necessarily at the book burning.
But the book burning is the start of when he's asking her to leave. And
yeah,
he
to like stop and like
asks her to leave. And then at the end, he's just so mad because he's like, I asked you repeatedly to leave, to leave, to leave. And then you put yourself in a position where you could be discovered, so much so that I had to interfere. And then she's so mad at him and she doesn't realize like the impact of that decision until the end, where she's like, he can't do anything. He's got no access to magic. Like, he's so beat down. I will say, like, the scene where she's on the island for like 8 weeks and she's like, I'm so mad that he left me here. I'm like, with everything that you know about
no
this
self-preservation. Like, no self-preservation.
Everything that this man has done for you throughout your life, 100 years of life, you think he's just gonna abandon you on a beach?
And just like not come back. Like, no.
And not come back.
Yeah.
And just strand you in an island. I was so irate because you know better. There is a problem. there is a problem. And that's where I kind of got frustrated with her character, but I think that was intentional. So, like, honestly, like, reading this, I don't know what I would improve in this book.
To me, I also felt
No.
like a lot of it was also applicable to today, obviously, and it infuriated me. Even going so far back as when she talked about being a midwife in, I don't remember what century, and that women would come to them for abortions because they weren't allowed to do it, but like realistically, they couldn't have those children. That's still applicable today. And or talking about the world wars and just how horrific human beings are to each other. I mean, and she even talked about it throughout history, seeing the colonizers in the Americas to the Nazis and whatever, and it's just still so heartbreaking reading those passages about how she
over and over again. Yeah.
It's like, we're doing that now. And it just
Yeah,
was
we are.
like, we're still.
Well, and the fact that,
doing
like,
this.
she acknowledges that it just gets worse each time. It's like warfare gets worse as technology gets better.
Yeah. Even when she was talking about when she was in Louisiana and she first met Silas, that burning fury that she had for this poor woman Jenny, like, you know what that is. As a woman, you know what that feeling is, and you know how she's feeling in that moment. And it's just, I don't know, like, there's a lot of emotions. This is a roller coaster. It really is.
I don't know the last book that made me feel so many different emotions. That I was so happy, I was so sad, I was so angry, I was so inspired, I was so heartbroken. It was so beautiful. This is one of the best books I've read in I can't tell you how long.
And it reminds you that nothing has to be flashy. It doesn't have to be chaotic. It doesn't have to be over the top to be well written. Something that is so artfully done, the way she weaves all of the different time periods in.
Yeah.
This is a book that you're not going to forget.
Inspired. I don't know if you guys did too. Like, to go out and do good and like to be a better human to your fellow humans. And I don't know.
So I am excited for the next one. So the way this ended was very ominous, that they're going to go god hunting, right?
Yeah, or it's just going to be like a battle.
I think like, all the gods are going to get together and hunt him down.
That's
like,
that's what I'm
logical
saying.
Progression of this story.
Yeah. Because that's how you bring back Silas.
And
how
if
you
she
bring back
fucking
Ira.
dies in the second book, I'm going to be so mad. Like, I swear to God, I won't speak for a week. She can't die.
But Kieran dies?
I was going to say,
I know. But maybe then she's
that a
bring
bad
him
thing?
Back to life somehow with like the bone on her, like her like ring that's made out of part of his rib.
Sacrifices
you know what I just thought
to
of, Lauren?
save him. Obviously, I just wrote the whole second book.
Like snaps all around.
I agree.
Would recommend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
And with that, we'll end this episode.
I'm trying so hard to stay awake.